Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pragya, the moderator of this call. Thank you for standing by and welcome to the live webinar on the topic of ensuring a successful enterprise cloud journey in association with IBM and CMR. In today's webinar, we discover how migration to a multi-cloud environment helped Godrej reduce IT costs by 20% and increase disaster recovery coverage to 100%. For the duration of presentation, all participants' lines will be in listen-only mode. We will have a question and answer session post the presentation. I would like to now hand over the conference to our first speaker, Shirish Joshi, State Project Executive, Enterprise Client Management, IBM. Over to you, Mr. Joshi.
Thank you, Pragya. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to, kind of go through the journey of how enterprises, large enterprises, actually adopt cloud as a part of the digital transformation strategy. Over the past one decade, cloud has become a very integral, and nearly every digital transformation strategy has adopted cloud, and the enterprises are actually picking up the workloads and moving them up to cloud. So why are enterprises doing this? Right? The cloud allows enterprises access to the latest technologies like the Internet of Things, high-performance computing, and blockchain from virtually any vendor. Right? These technologies empower them to reimagine the business processes and the ecosystems. It helps them rediscover their businesses and redefine the new business models, which are hosted on the clouds with a lot of agile interfaces with the various technology which is available. Talked about IoT, blockchain, cognitive solutions which are available. Cloud also allows enterprises to tap into more sources of data, both their own as well as partner data, social data, weather data, and other data sources. Plus new ways to analyze those sources. Even just this ability to source more innovation and data for more places. So only 20% of the enterprises' workloads today have moved to date onto the cloud. Now, there are a lot of questions. Why only 20%? What we are seeing as a pattern over a period of time is all the workloads cannot be moved onto the public cloud. At some point in time, the enterprises have to work in a very bimodal strategy. So what is bimodal strategy? Because there's one mode of data which actually resides on the private cloud, which has got systems of records, right? Secure data which needs to be, interactive with a number of users, and it has to be highly secured in a private cloud or a private data center kind of arrangement. The other portion, the second mode, is about putting the workloads onto the public cloud, which are largely the systems of engagement, which are typically the applications which are agile in nature, something very much related to something like a product launch, or applications which I talked about, that are solutions or technologies which need to establish an API connect to pulling new sources of data so that the enterprise can consume the data, process the data, and bring in more new insights to the business. Right? So we talked today about two chapters. How do we actually get on to the journey of adoption of cloud for the large enterprise? Chapters. One is a simple migration and innovation. Right? So there are workloads which you can look at, in a very simplistic way of where you shift some of your workloads which are currently working on your legacy infrastructure or even the in-house systems. Right? How do we do that? So why do I say this, Pragya? Can we move to slide number 3 now? So I will talk about chapter 1. So in chapter 1 of cloud, the emphasis was mainly on the rapid value and easy stuff. So look at some of the potential candidates, very low-hanging fruits. which we can migrate them relatively with simple apps and workloads to the infrastructure as a service, which actually helps you bring the costs, infrastructure lower. And maybe to innovate with new technologies and extend the existing apps. So that means we are there some of the low-hanging fruits, like some of the applications which can be easily shifted onto the public cloud. Largely here the objective is to look at how do we lower the infrastructure costs and reap the benefits of a shared infrastructure, and this is purely going to be driven as an infrastructure as a service. And you can shift everything to the cloud in terms of models like which goes on to the various clouds. I mean, we can always start looking at what are the complex workloads and what are the simple workloads, right? Sometimes as much as 5 times projected the costs. It costs for preparing the data, moving the data, integrating to the back office, etc. So we will look at the second step. Basically, the first step in the chapter 1 is the driver here is to lower the costs. There we are going to lift and shift the application and the workloads. Right? Second step is to start looking at how do we modernize these applications, right? Which are basically the systems of records. Some of these applications may not be run on the cloud applications, but you can start assessing these applications whether what level of modernization can be done, so that we can use technologies like containers and microservices to reap the benefits of cloud, which helps you adopt the elastic nature of the cloud. Right? The third driver is basically start building some applications and new technology. To build with cloud, where you create the new cloud native applications. Right? And then as you start moving to this journey, you should also start looking at how do I manage this multi-cloud infrastructure. And I say multi-cloud because we have already looked at some of the infrastructure, which is basically the systems of records which is hosted on the private cloud. There are some workloads which you have already moved to the cloud, to the public cloud, which you have migrated. Could be one service provider or could be multiple service providers. So hence we have created a hybrid cloud environment, and these workloads need to seamlessly integrate and communicate with the applications. Right? It's also important that we put a governance system across this in terms of how do we build the security and manage the multi-cloud environment, having a good visibility in terms of are we optimizing the infrastructure usage, are we delivering the better performance, how are we actually managing the cloud, in terms of scaling up vertically whenever there is a demand for delivering higher IOs, etc. Or maybe the catered application works. Now, chapter 2, when we move to chapter 2 in this next chapter of cloud of the enterprise, chapter 2 will be very heavily centered around moving mission-critical applications onto the open and secure hybrid clouds. But first, we need to understand what's preventing the rapid move today. Unless we know what these mission-critical workloads are, right? It's very important for us to understand what is preventing us to move them today. Okay, interestingly, this IDC cloud forecast for 2018-20, it shows that the 80% estimate is based on the total market size projected to be something like $1 trillion. That means there is about 80% of workloads which has still not moved on to the cloud. This market size opportunity is close to about $1 trillion. Currently, the combined installed base on software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or even platform as a service today is only about 130 billion, which is just the 20% of what we're talking. Right? This means more than 80% has not yet moved to the cloud. So enterprises have started looking very carefully in terms of what are those mission-critical workloads, which needs to be a right strategy to migrate them to the public cloud. Okay. Now, hybrid multi-cloud world creates a lot of new opportunities. At the same time, it also creates new challenges. So why I say challenges, we will discuss about something, what are those potential challenges and how do we manage them. Right? So 94% of the enterprises today have hybrid cloud models which are existing, which are a mix of public, private, dedicated, and countless software as a service applications. For example, a lot of enterprises today use Salesforce, which is basically delivered in software as a service. Enterprises do have their private clouds, which we talked in the earlier slides about the systems of engagement. Right? And then we also talking about some of the dedicated clouds, where you host the workloads as a private data center on the public clouds. For that, as we talked, and we move on to slide number 5. So that's the introduction for the hybrid cloud, and how are we going to create new opportunities and new challenges which come along with new opportunities. This new hybrid multi-cloud reality creates not only new opportunities that I talked about, but also new challenges that I can do. 82% actually are concerned about how they will connect all of these clouds and the traditional life. We talked about creating a library for environment, and obviously we're talking about not a single public cloud. It could be Amazon, it could be Azure, it could be Google or IBM software. And at the same time, it needs to also talk to the traditional IP and multiple private clouds. 70% need better ways to move the applications, workloads, and data between these clouds more effectively. Audience here, when I talk about some of these statistics, so these are some of the IDC studies which have been done globally. And, this is where is how the enterprises are looking for. So when I say 70%, the 70% of the enterprises need better ways to move the apps. They need some methodology, adoption, journey to migrate some of these applications, and also assess what are the right workloads which they need to prioritize to move them onto the cloud. So 60% today are worried about how they will manage this new mix of cloud and environment in a consistent way across the vendors without introducing new security compliances. Think that they are consuming multiple public clouds. At the same time, they need to be very sure that they are not introducing new security compliance risks when they start putting these workloads on the multiple public cloud environments. Even for those looking for aggressively moving to more cloud today, it will be a long journey. So you definitely need a very guided way, a detailed planning in terms of assessing your workloads and prioritizing what workloads will probably move. And you also need to figure out what the kind of workloads which are better to run on a particular cloud. That means the interviews need to be what's called the affinity. So that means there has to be an affinity for a workload to work on a particular cloud to reap the benefits of that cloud provider. Now, moving to slide number 6, you need to prioritize, as I was talking about. You need to look at your workloads and define what is done. So, not all workloads are created equal. So there are some workloads when you assess. You start thinking of what are the workloads you need to retire and what are the workloads you need to keep. Right? So then you start looking at, what are those, if you believe that your applications, your data and your workloads are unique, then you must tailor your journey to address your unique business requirements. Right? Every enterprise will have a very unique business needs. So we need to start tailoring the journey or creating a roadmap for cloud migration or cloud adoption for an enterprise. So that begins by putting a reference architecture and try to build a modular approach of how you actually drive the journey. It begins by understanding the characteristics of your specific applications and workloads, and then setting the prioritization, what to migrate versus modernize the base applications. Some of them, as I said, could be migrated as is, and some of them need modernization in terms of retweaking the architecture or containerizing these workloads so that they can reap the benefits of the cloud and moving them up to cloud. Once we prioritize, we can then optimize the workload placement. So then, why do we need to optimize the workload placement? So obviously, one of the drivers we talked about in the chapter 1, which is simplistic way of lifting and shifting the workload, is about the low-hanging driver was to reduce the costs. So it cannot be like to like. When you move on to a cloud, because of the nature of cloud and its elasticity, you might actually optimize the workload before you place this workload onto the cloud. So in that journey, you also start defining some of the cloud models in terms of how do we suit the requirements of the workloads. Here is where we start looking at what are the workloads which should be placed on public cloud, so that the optimal way to deliver the particular workload and the way you want to reap the benefits of the cloud. It could be a public cloud, or it could be a dedicated cloud, or it could be a bare metal, which is a private data center on a public cloud, or it could be a private installation, a legacy implementation in your environment, or adopt software as a service. Right? For example, the regulated industries need to run some workloads on the private cloud, mainly the BFSI clients. So here is where we need to also have a look at what are the regulatory requirements, and that also defines or influences your cloud journey roadmap or defining a migration plan. Certain workloads like email may be best suited for software as a service, for example, Office 365. Right? ERPs which may be best suited in a fully managed environment, and so on. Now, moving to slide number 7. Modernize once, run anywhere. What does it mean? We also talked about modernizing the applications. Suppose if we are moving nearly $1 trillion of workloads, where we talked about modernizing the application, containerizing the applications, converting these applications or defining the microservices architecture for these workloads. Right? We do it once, and then we are able to run our workloads anywhere. When I say anywhere, it's basically on any cloud platform, any public cloud platform, or any cloud platform. What that means is there is no lock-in for an enterprise to be with a service provider. Right? As and when a service provider introduces new features or it becomes economical, you can always move the cloud workloads across the multiple service providers, so we can maximize the business efficiency. Today, nearly 85% of enterprises are either maintaining or increasing the use of open source software. For example, using Open Linux and Docker to enable portability, or Kubernetes to optimize workloads and enable the greater consistency across the clouds and vendors. This is critical because as we modernize applications using the microservices containers, we want to be optimized where we deploy versus deploy to mix and match the different cloud services from one vendor with the cost effective compute from other vendors. So what we're talking about is we can mix and match various cloud service providers with their next generation cloud services. And at the same time, what are the cost-effective compute and storage from other vendors? So while combining the global public cloud with the private on-prem model to look okay. Moving to slide number 8. With cloud environment, we talked about legacy IT infrastructure, we talked about private cloud, we talked about multiple public clouds. It's very important to have the right visibility and control of the multi-cloud agility. When I talked about the multi-cloud agility, it's about compliance, it's about placing the workloads, it's about provisioning the workloads and creating a very agile process for the businesses to consume. So it is very, very important that we create a multi-cloud managed environment with a single governance layer and the visibility of the workloads placed across multiple service providers with seamless borderless integration. So when I say borderless integration, is the ease of moving the workloads across multiple service providers, right? And end-to-end security, where this is very, very critical for enterprises to have the right control and visibility of the workloads working on the public cloud. Okay. Quickly, moving to slide number 10, which talks about how IBM can help you here to take this journey and make this more, easier journey to move to the cloud, and also guide you across with various risks and pitfalls during the journey. This approach of going through multiple steps, we offer every step we offer you services which would help you traverse this journey. In the initial stages, it would be advice, where we can help you, where we can actually advise you to look at what are the right workloads, look at what are the optimized service provider with the right cloud for workloads, do an affinity study, and help you create a roadmap. Right? Second step is about moving your applications. We will help you assess, identify what are the right workloads, migrate the workload to a cloud migration factory, right? And also start looking at what are the workloads which need modernizing and help you as potential workloads which would be moved on to the cloud. Third is, we could help you build the cloud, right? Build innovative applications and experiences. This is about the applications which are common in cloud, or re-architect some of the applications, which cannot be modernized, right? And then finally, we will also help you manage a multi-cloud environment and put a governance layer in terms of the visibility of the cloud, continuous optimization in terms of what are the security needs, plus start looking at driving the entire governance across the multiple cloud boundaries, which we talked about seamless integration, which is borderless integration as well, right? On a single platform where we can have the right visibility and drive the management of costs, which also helps enterprises optimize the costs over a period of time and also reduce some of the security risks by having an end-to-end view across the multiple clouds on a single pane of glass. So here are some of the approaches which enriches the user experience by using various consulting methods or technologies or tools to help you take you through the journey in terms of providing you the right advice services providing you the right plan or roadmap to make a move of some of your workloads onto the cloud, which helps you migrate your workloads. And then we can also help you, build some of your applications and manage it effectively. So as a service provider, I think IBM provides you end-to-end services which actually help you adopt a seamless journey to the cloud. Okay, so here is where I would probably, start about, talking about the enterprise journey. Now, I will hand over this presentation to Pragyat. Pragyat, if there are any questions, probably I can take now, or maybe we can take it later. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for setting up the platform for today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to the next speaker, Satyavrat Mishra, Assistant Vice President, IT, Godrej. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Satyavrat.
Yeah, we can definitely hear you. So should we start the conversation, or we could probably ask Satya probably you can help us to understand how Godrej adopted into cloud, and what was your personal experience of having worked with IBM as a partner?
Sure. So, folks, our cloud journey started somewhere around 2 years back, right? And just to give you a background of what Godrej is and what we do here. So Godrej Industries is basically a conglomerate having business interests in chemicals, properties, agribusiness, and consumer products. I am part of the corporate IT, which runs a shared IT services for the complete Godrej Industries. One of the challenges that we had here, running the IT infrastructure was that it was really a siloed approach. Each business having their own set of IT applications, IT infrastructure, and a single team to manage these kind of systems. So that was the starting point for us to kind of start exploring that whether the cloud is the right approach, which can actually bring about cost savings, synergy, and has reduced some of the complexities that we were facing, and it will obviously help in breaking the silos and overall optimizing the operations. So we started exploring various service providers and both the models, private as well as public cloud, and then finally we decided that at this point in time the private cloud approach is the best suited option, because that was the first time we were moving away from a traditional CapEx-oriented kind of running the infrastructure to an OpEx-based model. And therefore, we worked along with IBM since they were our managed services partners. We thought that it would be best that we work with IBM, because they were anyways managing our IT infrastructure, and therefore we finally worked out a model, and we started migrating our existing workloads on a phased approach. And while we were working on the business case and approvals, one of the questions came in, because this was the first time we were trying to move in the complete infrastructure to a private cloud. The question came in that why not take a DR because not used so frequently. And we took that approach, and we first did this complete DR on cloud migration with IBM, and we kind of combined the DR setup of all the the business units which were here, and it really brought about around 15 to 20% saving, and we could actually configure the sizes. Usually DR is set up say at 50%, 60% of the production size, but we could do the setup at 100% capacity and at 20% lesser cost. So that was kind of the, that gave a lot of boost, and therefore it helped us in kind of, getting the approval for the next phase of migration. And we did this complete lift and shift migration over a period of 7 to 8 months because different businesses were involved. And finally, it got completed, around a year back. It has been now somewhere around 10 months to 1 year that we have been operating with IBM on the private cloud. And so far the experience has been really smooth. And so that was our, the phase 1 of migration. The next phase of migration was where we wanted to kind of start exploring the public cloud. So both Azure as well as AWS, and depending on what kind of application will fit there, as Shirish explained on his slides, that it's a phased journey, and right, we need to find out which are the right applications which fit in the private and which best suited for the public cloud. So we are currently we have kind of completed our phase 1, stage 1 of migration, and now we are in actually stage 2. Where we are doing, we are identifying from our existing applications which are the best suited applications to move on to a public cloud. And the first set of applications that we have identified, which we are currently working on with AWS, are analytics and basically data mart. So these are the two applications that are currently being built on the public cloud. Along with that, there are other internet-facing applications, B2C, B2B kind of applications, for which the study is going on, and maybe in the next couple of months we'll be moving those also to the public cloud.
Yeah, thank you. I think precisely for chapter 1, we discussed about the simple workloads which could be virtualized, lift and shift, host them onto the cloud, reap the benefits of optimized cost of infrastructure, and try to create a consolidated virtualized environment. Now, right as Satya said, now chapter 2 is where they're starting to look at what are the affinities for their applications and assess the suitable workloads onto the various cloud service providers. Right? As we take this journey, we will work very closely with Godrej to help them make their journey and their experience seamless, to start looking at in a very agnostic way in terms of how do we manage this hybrid cloud environment end to end in a more secure way, and creating the agility for the businesses to have a quick go-to-market kind of an approach and make them more agile. So yeah, probably, we should not be running out of time. We can spend some time quickly to address if our audience has some questions, or if they want to hear more experiences from Satya, who has, led this project of the cloud migration journey.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we open the floor for question and answer. If you wish to ask any question, please press 0 and 1 on your telephone keypad. Alternatively, you can post your questions over the chat appearing on the right side of your window. I would again request all the participants, if you wish to ask any question, please press 0 and 1 on your telephone keypad. Alternatively, you can ask your questions over the chat appearing on the right side of your window. We have the first question. How did the IBM Godrej partnership display innovation?
Okay, do you want me to address that? Who is the question to? I mean, is it for Satya or Shirish?
So the speaker name was not written. It is just a question.
Okay, so let me quickly address that. So the innovation part comes in terms of how we can actually help Godrej do advisory services on the cloud, right? Our consultants can use some of those tools or the process or methods or approach to start assessing some of the workloads, right? Create a quick affinity roadmap for your applications as well. And then we also started looking at how do we automate, migration of some of these services onto first the virtualized environment, and then also start looking at how do we use some best practices methods which IBM has devised over a period of time with their experiences of having migrated millions of workloads onto the private as well as public clouds. So all that experience is actually templified and a factory industrialized offering, I can say, delivered in a very factory environment, using a cloud migration factory, which does the delivery. And I should say, to create that level of agility in a large enterprise, the cloud migration factory becomes a very important asset of innovation which is delivered by IBM to help seamlessly move the workloads onto the public cloud and be successful on the first time. So that's the answer I have. And so if you want,
definitely. I think
that you can.
Yeah. So basically, the migration to cloud certainly requires some kind of help, consulting and advisory services, because my personal opinion is that it would not make sense to migrate everything to cloud. It is always the kind of workloads which are either uncertain or require very high uptime, require SAP kind of application. Those are the primary candidates which should be looked at to be moved to cloud to begin with. The kind of workloads like ERP solution and stuff, I think good candidates to remain in the private cloud because of the security concerns, and many organizations are not really comfortable moving their SAP kind of workloads to a public cloud. And I don't think that those public cloud can anyways give any additional advantage running ERP solution. So I think it makes sense to keep them in private cloud and run all other such kind of applications, especially analytics or anything that requires very high compute and are cyclical in nature. They are the right candidates, and obviously all these things require maybe consulting, for help from the people who have done this kind of migrations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. We have the next question. What type of business benefits or operational savings can be realized by migration to cloud?
Okay. Shirish, you can take that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sure. See, the first thing that I will talk about is the operational efficiency. Having, as I was mentioning in a couple of minutes back, we were running a traditional kind of infrastructure, having siloed approach. There was not any synergy, and therefore cloud really helped us in kind of bringing about synergy between various businesses and reducing overall complexity, which finally actually translates into reduction of cost, right? And obviously because we are onto a private cloud, we don't really have to kind of invest upfront on the capex assets which we were initially doing. So in case, for example, if we use a new application, or sometimes there are a lot of these sandboxes or POC kind of requirements which keep coming from the businesses, you don't really have to provision for that. As and when it is required on a OpEx basis, it can be taken up from the private cloud service provider, and that really helps, because otherwise in a traditional setup, you wouldn't really know as to, sometimes people over provision, sometimes they under provision, and it is very difficult to kind of maintain the constant workload there. And so I would say that all three, the cost efficiency, reduction of complexity, and bringing about the synergy, these are the three key benefits that we have seen.
Thank you, sir. I would again request all the participants, if you wish to ask any question, please press 0 and 1 on your telephone keypad. Alternatively, you can post your questions over the chat appearing on the right side of your window. We have the last question. What are the core services that IBM can provide to facilitate cloud adoption?
Okay, so let me take that. If you're okay, then probably one of the slides I talked about the various offerings IBM can deliver at various stages of their journey to cloud. To start with, we have advisory services. This is mainly the consulting services which help you visualize whether your applications have an affinity to move to the cloud. Start assessing some of your applications and also make a roadmap in terms of what are those low-hanging fruits, which could be a simple lift and shift to take to step number 1. And start looking at also identifying some of the workloads which need a potential, a kind of modernization. It could be refactoring or re-architecting approach and kind of show you the roadmap in terms of what journey to take to modernize those applications and help you build a migration plan to move these clouds. And while we do this, we can actually work with you on a business case and give you a holistic view of what is the path you should start your journey on. Second, if you have already traversed this journey of identifying a roadmap, then IBM can come in and help you migrate some of these workloads which you already have identified. Using some of our assets like the Cloud Migration Factory, we can devise a strategy and set up the processes and the tools and the governance of migrating these workloads which you have identified very seamlessly. Right? Third, if you have identified some of the areas where you need to start developing new applications using the next-gen technology and reaping the benefits of the cloud by integrating across the multiple service providers, and like I talked about, integrating with the technologies like IoT, blockchain, etc., with cognitive solutions, we can help you develop some of these new applications using some of the technologies like Kubernetes, creating a microservices architecture, which helps you seamlessly move across various cloud services and use some of the elastic features of cloud, etc. Right? Lastly, if you have already taken all these steps and you would want IBM to start looking at and managing all of these workloads seamlessly, create a kind of a governance, to set up some of those best practices and processes of managing these workloads in a very secured environment, we can provide these multi-cloud managed services to you. So IBM can help you at various stages, or we can help you build the entire journey with all of these stages of journey, take you through seamlessly with an excellent experience and in a most optimized way and in a most agile way. I hope that answers the question in terms of how IBM can take you and walk you through the journey. But not last but least, I should say, IBM services are such a very agnostic, and we have built stability across multiple cloud providers. Could be Azure, could be AWS, could be Google, or could be Alibaba or IBM Cloud Services, right? So we have capability skills across to move your migration, move your workflows and migrate them onto any cloud from anywhere to anywhere. And I was also referring in my discussion about the Cloud Migration Factory, which has built the capabilities of skills, methods, processes to migrate from anywhere, from any platform, any cloud service provider, vice versa. Okay, that's the overview. Yes, I know.
Thank you, sir. At this time, do you have any further questions from the participants? I would like to hand over the floor back to you.
Yeah, I think you should. Is it a good idea that you run the video now, so that certainly this experience which will last you. Thank you.
We are now looking forward to leveraging their cloud migration factory to move some of our enterprise workloads to true multi-cloud environment.
Godrej leadership now expects IBM to start functioning like a startup, but at a scale of an enterprise by bringing in agility and nimbleness to respond quickly to changing market needs.
Thank you, speakers. I would like to turn the program back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Pragya. Thank you very much. And thank you, audiences. I think we have delivered value to you. And I really appreciate the questions. These are very insightful, and probably every enterprise we've seen, has these questions, when they start looking at how to take the cloud journey. And I only hope we're addressed. But as Pragya said, you always can send out emails for more queries. We will definitely get back to you on each of your queries with required answers. Or probably, we can call you back and kind of set up some deeper discussions across, different kind of meetings you could attend, etc. So we can definitely help you, have the first steps towards your journey to cloud adoption. So, do you want to say something to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as you rightly mentioned, so basically, in case if any other details or you could be of any help, we are certainly here to share our experiences or any other inputs with regards to the cloud journey. As you said, this is not the end in itself, because there are so many innovations which are happening in cloud, and every day new things are coming up. So obviously it's a long journey. We are just started here, and there's a long way to go for all of us.
Thank you, Sir. Thank you so much. And congratulations to you. You can wrap up the webinar.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you, participants. That does conclude our conference call for today. Thank you for your participation. You may all disconnect your lines now, and request you to kindly fill the feedback form at the end of the webinar. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Sakar. Thanks.